In the waning days of World War II, as the Nazi war machine crumbled under the relentless advance of Allied forces from east and west, as German cities burned under the bombs of the Allies, and the Red Army surged inexorably across Eastern Europe, as Hitler retreated into his underground bunker, and the 1,000-year Reich faced imminent collapse, a peculiar artifact would emerge from the rubble of the Third Reich that would captivate imaginations for decades to come. A device so enigmatic, so shrouded in secrecy and scientific intrigue, that it would haunt researchers, conspiracy theorists, military intelligence agencies, and historians for generations. This is the story of Die Glocke, the bell, a mysterious contraption allegedly hidden deep within a Polish valley, allegedly capable of defying the laws of physics themselves, and allegedly the key to understanding the most dangerous weapons program the world has ever known. But separating fact from fiction, reality from myth, science from science fiction, would prove to be one of the most challenging archaeological and historical mysteries of our time, a puzzle that remains largely unsolved even today, despite decades of intensive investigation and scientific scrutiny from multiple nations and researchers worldwide. What was this machine? Did it actually work as described? And what does it tell us about the nature of scientific ambition, wartime desperation, the pursuit of power at any cost, the willingness of regimes to pursue dangerous research, and the thin line between genius and madness that separates visionary research from dangerous delusion? These are the questions that would consume researchers and captivate public imagination for decades, driving expeditions into the mountains of Eastern Europe, inspiring countless documentaries, books, and films, and raising profound questions about what was actually possible in Nazi laboratories hidden from the prying eyes of the world. To understand the Nazi bell, we must first comprehend the context in which it allegedly emerged. A Nazi regime that, even as defeat loomed on every horizon and the end seemed inevitable, continued to invest enormous resources in exotic weapons development, secret research programs, and technologies that defied conventional wisdom and ordinary military strategy. The regime was gambling everything on advanced weapons, on breakthrough technologies that might somehow, impossibly, reverse the tide of war at the last possible moment. A desperate bet on science and technology to save an already lost cause. The Third Reich had already produced weapons of unprecedented destruction, from the V-2 rocket program that terrorized London and introduced the world to the era of intercontinental missiles and space technology, to the horrific nuclear research that, had the war lasted longer, or had the Germans been more successful, might have fundamentally altered human history and given the Nazis access to atomic weapons with which to defend their homeland. The regime was investing in advanced jet aircraft that could fly faster than any propeller-driven fighter, sophisticated radar systems that could detect enemy aircraft from great distances, revolutionary tank designs that incorporated new armor and firepower, and experimental weapons that pushed the boundaries of contemporary technology in ways that seemed almost impossible. But the Nazi bell allegedly represented something even more ambitious, more dangerous, and more profoundly strange than anything that had come before. A device that seemed to challenge not merely military superiority, but the fundamental laws of nature itself and the very foundation of physics. According to fragmentary accounts that would surface in the post-war years, drawn from testimonies of surviving German scientists, SS officers, Allied intelligence agencies, and captured documents, the bell was a massive device, perhaps resembling an enormous metallic bell shape, supposedly constructed from an exotic metallic compound, powered by rotating cylinders filled with a mysterious mercury-based compound, and capable of generating a mysterious electromagnetic or gravitational effect of staggering power. The Nazi scientists who allegedly worked on the project, under conditions of extreme secrecy and intense pressure, claimed it could do everything from levitating objects to manipulating space-time itself, from disrupting radio communications across entire regions to rendering conventional weapons inert from causing disorientation and illness in living creatures to possibly opening rifts in space-time. Some accounts suggested it could open dimensional portals or create stable wormholes, claims so extraordinary that they strained credulity even among those desperate to believe in secret Nazi superweapons. The device allegedly weighed hundreds of tons, required massive amounts of electrical power, possibly several megawatts continuously, and stood several stories tall when fully assembled, making it a technological marvel in its sheer scale and ambition. The first concrete information about the bell emerged in the decades after the war, particularly in accounts given by surviving German scientists and military officers who claimed knowledge of the project. One of the most detailed testimonies came from Igor Witkowski, a Polish researcher and journalist who, beginning in the 1990s, conducted extensive interviews with former Nazi officers and scientists who had survived the war and Soviet occupation. According to these sources, corroborated by multiple witnesses and supported by circumstantial evidence, the bell had been developed at a highly classified research facility in Lower Silesia in southwestern Poland, possibly near Ludwigsdorf, in a facility built deep underground and heavily fortified, in a region that had been at the center of German industrial and scientific development for centuries. The project was supposedly under the command of the SS, the Nazi elite paramilitary organization known for their ruthlessness and ambitious black science programs. Their willingness to pursue dangerous and unethical research regardless of human cost, and their belief that superior technology could reverse the course of the war. The SS maintained numerous secret research facilities across occupied Europe, conducting experiments later revealed to be of stunning barbarity and scientific recklessness. The technology allegedly had connections to other mysterious Nazi research initiatives, including secret bases in Antarctica, according to some accounts, and a vast underground facility network supposed to shelter the regime's most advanced work, hidden away in mountain fortresses and impenetrable bunkers that might survive total military defeat. The accounts described a device that weighed hundreds of tons, stood several stories tall, and hummed with an unsettling violet glow when operational, a glow that witnesses described as both beautiful and deeply unsettling, suggesting phenomena related to plasma generation or intense electromagnetic radiation. Scientists who worked on the project suffered mysterious illnesses and radiation poisoning, symptoms suggestive of exposure to intense electromagnetic fields or radiation, suggesting whatever the bell did, it wasn't safe to be in its vicinity. Accounts speak of workers who developed strange rashes, sudden hair loss, severe neurological symptoms and seizures, and in some cases sudden death and organ failure, all suggestive of acute radiation poisoning from intense exposure. Some accounts allege that test subjects exposed to the device suffered grotesque mutations and deformities, instant crystallization of biological tissue, or complete disintegration at the molecular level, claims so horrifying they suggested a power fundamentally at odds with conventional physics. By the time Soviet forces closed in on the facility in 1945, as the Red Army advanced from the east and American forces pushed from the west, the accounts continued. The Nazis had apparently dismantled the bell and hidden its components across a network of secret locations, ensuring that even in defeat, this terrible knowledge would not fall entirely into Allied hands. Some versions claimed the bell had been moved to a secure underground facility in the Owl Mountains, a remote area that would become part of the Iron Curtain after the war. Others suggested it had been transported to South America, where elements of the Nazi regime were supposedly establishing a secret base to continue their research far from the victorious Allies. Still other accounts claimed it was hidden in the mountains of Tibet, transported there by Nazi expeditions seeking to preserve their knowledge. These accounts, while lacking substantial verification from contemporary documentary evidence, captured the public imagination precisely because they remained mysterious, tantalizing, and impossible to definitively disprove. The scientific community approached the Nazi bell with profound skepticism. and rightfully so. Maintaining healthy doubt, rooted in the scientific method and empirical investigation of extraordinary claims that challenge established physics. If such a device could actually generate the effects described, anti-gravity, dimensional rifts, or manipulation of space-time, it would violate fundamental laws of physics as we understand them. The known laws of thermodynamics, electromagnetism, and general relativity, rigorously tested and proven across centuries of scientific investigation, would need to be completely reimagined. A device that could create stable wormholes would represent a breakthrough, comparable to the discovery of fire or the invention of the wheel. Yet while extreme claims about the bell likely exceed what any device could accomplish, the question remains. What if the Nazis did create a device that produced some kind of novel electromagnetic effect that was simply misunderstood or exaggerated by witnesses? In the 2000s, several researchers and investigative teams began seriously examining the Nazi bell claims from positions of rigorous skepticism combined with genuine scientific curiosity. Some modern researchers have proposed that the bell might have been an extremely powerful microwave generator or radio frequency emitter, capable of generating intense electromagnetic radiation across a broad spectrum. Such a device would indeed have biological effects on exposed organisms, would require intensive shielding, might cause sensations of disorientation or illness in those nearby, and could plausibly damage conventional electronics. A sufficiently powerful microwave emitter, operating in certain frequency ranges, could theoretically generate effects that witnesses might describe as a violet glow or eerie humming sound. This would be a genuinely impressive piece of technology for the 1940s, would represent a significant military application, and would explain the secrecy, isolation of the facility, and illnesses reported by workers. Yet it would not require violation of any known laws of physics. Other researchers have proposed that the bell might have been a form of plasma physics experiment, attempting to create and contain plasma at unprecedented temperatures and densities using rotating electromagnetic fields. Plasma physics in the 1940s was essentially non-existent as a serious field of study, so a Nazi research program investigating plasma generation and containment would have been genuinely novel. A powerful plasma generator would glow with an eerie violet light. As ionized gas became excited, would produce intense electromagnetic radiation, would be dangerous to humans in proximity, and would be exactly the kind of cutting-edge physics research that would appeal to ambitious Nazi scientists seeking revolutionary weapons and breakthroughs. The historical record supports the conclusion that the Nazis were genuinely interested in advanced physics research and willing to invest enormous resources in ambitious scientific projects. The Nazis maintained ongoing research programs in nuclear physics, rocketry, advanced metallurgy, exotic material science, and exotic weapons development, some of which represented genuine cutting-edge work. They recruited the best scientists they could convince or coerce to work within the Third Reich, offering them resources, prestige, and protection from persecution in exchange for their research and loyalty. They built extensive facilities dedicated to research and development, hidden in remote locations far from bombing campaigns, facilities that represented enormous investments of money and resources. The bell, whatever it was, would have fit seamlessly into this broader pattern of Nazi scientific ambition. What makes the Nazi bell particularly intriguing is that if such a device did exist and did generate measurable effects, those effects could potentially be reconstructed and studied by modern scientists using contemporary equipment and techniques. We now understand vastly more about plasma physics, electromagnetic fields, exotic materials, quantum mechanics, and the boundaries of what is physically possible than scientists in the 1940s did. If the bell was based on sound physical principles, even principles not fully understood at the time, modern investigators should theoretically be able to identify and potentially recreate those principles. This is precisely what has motivated several genuine scientific investigations into the possibility of the bell. In 2005, a team of researchers led by Dr. Joseph Farrell and others attempted to reconstruct the theoretical physics that might underlie a Nazi anti-gravity device. Using published historical records, fragmentary testimonies of former Nazi scientists, declassified intelligence documents from multiple governments, and contemporary physics, they attempted to reverse engineer what such a device might have been capable of and how it might have worked. Their conclusion was fascinating. If the Nazis had been investigating certain theoretical frameworks in gravitational physics not publicly discussed in physics literature until decades later, then perhaps they had independently developed technologies based on these principles. The specific theoretical frameworks involved modifications to Einstein's general relativity, the possibility of manipulating space-time geometry through exotic electromagnetic field configurations, and the possibility of generating what physicists call closed time-like curves, or traversable wormholes under certain highly specific conditions. None of these frameworks are currently considered feasible with any known technology, and many mainstream physicists argue they are fundamentally impossible, given enormous energy requirements. But they are not violations of known physical law. What this suggests is that if the Nazi bell was a real device, it might represent genuine progress toward understanding these cutting-edge theoretical frameworks. Progress the Nazis may have achieved through brilliant intuition, experimental work, and sheer luck. The evidence for the bell's existence remains frustratingly inconclusive even today. No intact example of the device has ever been discovered, despite numerous expeditions to alleged facilities in Poland and elsewhere over past decades. The physical evidence consists primarily of vague contemporary references in Nazi documents, fragmentary testimony from surviving scientists, and testimony of spies who claimed to have received information about the bell, but never actually observed it directly or provided corroborating photographic evidence. In the absence of tangible physical evidence, the question becomes whether the Nazi bell is a real historical artifact we simply have not yet found, or if it is a myth that has grown through decades of retelling and elaboration. The most intellectually honest answer is probably that we simply do not know with certainty, and this uncertainty is what makes the Nazi bell such a fascinating subject of historical and scientific inquiry. What we can say with absolute confidence is that the Nazis were genuinely interested in advanced physics research and willing to invest enormous resources in ambitious scientific projects that other nations considered impractical or impossible. The Nazis maintained highly classified research programs in secret facilities, some of which were not fully discovered or understood even after the war. It is entirely plausible that the Nazis could have developed advanced electromagnetic generation technology or exotic plasma physics experiments in the 1940s, as these represent straightforward extensions of known physics and engineering. The testimony of former Nazi scientists and officers about the bell, while fragmentary and sometimes contradictory, demonstrates a consistent pattern of describing some kind of real device that generated measurable effects that seemed to defy ordinary explanation. If such a device did exist and was based on sound physical principles, it would theoretically be reconstructible and investigable by modern scientists who understand physics far better than their predecessors. The question of whether the Nazi bell actually worked and what that might mean for our understanding of physics and history is therefore a genuinely open scientific question that deserves continued investigation and scholarly attention. To answer it definitively, we would need either to find physical evidence of the bell itself, discover intact Nazi documents describing the device in detail with technical specifications, or locate surviving scientists with detailed knowledge of the project and its results. In the absence of such evidence, we are left with tantalizing possibility, with recognition that the Nazis were capable of far more advanced technology than we initially gave them credit for, and with humbling realization that history is always more complex and mysterious than our contemporary understanding suggests.